Joining me now, Democratic Congressman of Washington, Adam Smith. He is, of course, the ranking member on the Armed Services Committee and a frequent guest. We're glad to have you back here, sir. So let's begin with this U.S. ship that's on its way to the Mediterranean to start what is expected to be about a 60-day project to build this floating port to distribute aid to Gaza. While the president emphasized there will be no U.S. boots on the ground, are you concerned about sending 1,000 troops into this volatile region? I mean, could the president be more forceful on Israel getting humanitarian land crossings opened instead?
Well, I think you have to do both. I think this is an all-of-the-above strategy that's being employed. President Biden is absolutely right. The humanitarian situation inside Gaza right now is catastrophic. More needs to be done to get aid in. The efforts to build a pier to get aid in that way through the Mediterranean Sea are not exclusive. The president and many others continue to urge Israel to open up more corridors into Gaza and, crucially, within Gaza, to make sure that there are systems set up to deliver that aid in an efficient and effective way. So you have to do a lot. The airdrops are another piece of this, but I think it's part of a larger strategy to get more aid into Gaza.
So I spoke with Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs yesterday on the show, who co-signed a letter with other Democrats warning the president that an Israeli attack on Rafah could violate his own policy that countries receiving weapons must follow U.S. and international law. President Biden told Jonathan Capehart yesterday that an invasion of Rafah would be a red line, but then he wouldn't go so far as cutting off all weapons to Israel. I know, sir, you did not sign that letter, but do you have similar concerns?
Well, there's two pieces to this, or several, actually. One big thing that isn't really talked about is the threats that Israel faces from Hezbollah and from Iran, from Lebanon and from Syria. A big part of the reason why we provide weapons to Israel is to deter those threats. If we were to cut off weapons from Israel completely, it would give a much bigger incentive for Hezbollah to launch an attack from Lebanon and for Iran to do a similar thing through Syria. So you have to understand that that is part of the equation, part of what we're doing. As far as Rafah is concerned, it really depends on what Israel does and how they do it. I think urging caution, certainly at this moment, when you have, I think it's about 1 million plus people from Gaza in Rafah, civilians. That's where they went to flee the fighting elsewhere. An attack right now would be a humanitarian catastrophe, which brings us back to the humanitarian aid discussion and also the need to give people in Rafah some place to go where they can be safe and fed. So an attack right now, I think it would be an enormous mistake. And I do agree with the president and Ms. Jacobs and others on that point.
Okay. Let's move to the stalled aid to Ukraine. Senator Lindsey Graham said on Meet the Press this morning that Donald Trump is going to be meeting with Speaker Mike Johnson tomorrow or Tuesday to discuss turning Ukraine aid into what he calls a waivable, no-interest loan. Is this something you would support?
I can't imagine that working. I mean, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Look, we have a negotiated aid package that came out of the Senate with 77 votes. It was the product of about 6 months worth of negotiations back and forth. A whole bunch of different ideas were floated that didn't work until they finally got one that received incredibly strong bipartisan support. If Republicans in the House want to support Ukraine, they have a very simple choice. Give us a vote on the Senate bill. Everything else is simply, putting Ukraine on the path to a slow death. Any stalling technique of coming up with another option or trying to do this or trying to do that simply, isn't helping Ukraine. I doubt seriously the House can pass anything other than the Senate bill. And even if they did, it certainly wouldn't go anywhere in the Senate. There's a clear choice. Give us the vote on the deal that was negotiated in a bipartisan way in the House. And I think that's how you help Ukraine. And that's what we need to do. I can't look, Donald Trump doesn't want to help Ukraine. The fact that Mike Johnson is meeting with Donald Trump to discuss how to help Ukraine is not a helpful or positive sign.
The Pope weighed in on the Ukraine situation, saying that Ukraine should have the courage of a white flag and negotiate an end to the war with Russia. Now, his comments were made before Turkey offered Friday to host a summit between Ukraine and Russia to end the war. Short of the Ukraine funding going through, sir, how much longer can this war last? Do you see either side agreeing to a peace deal?
Well, I think the Pope should have been more balanced in what he said. I think he should have said the same thing to Putin. Is Putin willing to negotiate? Right now, that's the problem. He's not. He's continuing to attack all across Ukraine. So getting him to the negotiating table is the key, which brings me back to the aid package. Unless Putin is convinced that he cannot take over all of Ukraine, he won't stop. This aid package is a path to convincing him of that, to give Ukraine the military help that they need to stop Russia from pushing further into Ukraine and to force Russia to the peace table. Look, if you continue to put all of the burden on Ukraine, it gives Putin a pass, and he's just able to keep prosecuting the war that he started. And that's the thing that everyone should understand. You want this war to stop? I do too. Everybody wants this war to stop. Putin is the one prosecuting it. He is the one person who could stop the war like that, the only one. And let's put the pressure where the pressure ought to be.
Okay, point well taken there. Let me ask you one last question, this being on Donald Trump hosting Hungarian autocrat Viktor Orban at Mar-a-Lago on Friday. Hungary is a NATO ally, but is there reason to be concerned about this meeting?
No, absolutely. Look, there was an article about a year ago now in the New Yorker entitled "Make America Hungry Again," which analyzed the connection of the far-right politicians in America with the Hungarian government. And what Orbán has done is he's given you sort of a blueprint for how to crush democracy and move towards strongman autocratic government. It starts with silencing the media. Which he has definitely done in Hungary. It's what Putin did in Russia. First thing he did was to turn the media into a 100% propaganda arm of the state. So the fact that, the nominee for the Republicans, or the presumed nominee for the Republicans, is meeting with someone to discuss basically how to better suppress democracy and concentrate strongman rule should be deeply troubling to all of us. Now, look, democracy is different in different places. Hungary hasn't gone full Russia just yet, but you can see in Orbán's approach the seeds of how you get to that. So, yeah, it's deeply troubling that they're comparing notes, if you will.
Okay, I thank you for the conversation. As always, Congressman Adam Smith.